I knew as a professional pilot, I knew that if you've been in an accident, you turn off the battery, turn off the fuel. And so I reached to the instrument panel to do all those things. Being a professional, there was no instrument panel. It was as though a giant had come along in front of the helicopter, punched through the flaps top, grabbed the top of the instrument panel, and ripped it and rotated it underneath the aircraft.
That was today's guest, Pete Gillies, and I'm today's host, Jon Gray. I'd like to welcome you to the Helicopter Podcast, brought to you by Vertical HeliCASTS. I've stolen the show today from Halsey Schider, bringing you a conversation with aviation legend Pete Gillies and Doug Williams. At the time of recording, Pete Gillies was 92 years old and had spent 49 years as a legendary helicopter pilot. After 49 years of flying and spending most of his life shooting rifles and handguns, Pete's hard of hearing, so he had to implement some creative strategies to ask Pete questions during the recording. Pete Gillies is known for his expertise in long line and vertical reference operations, mountain flying, and auto rotation training. Pete previously earned recognition as the Helicopter Association International's Instructor of the Year. During a recent conversation with Dave Callan, who's a retired Las Vegas Metropolitan Police helicopter pilot and the owner of SR3 Training Concepts, he stated he would not have survived the 2 engine failures he experienced during his career without the training he received while flying at Western Helicopters with Pete Gillies. His journey into aviation was unconventional, despite growing up in an aviation-centric household. His father was a vice president at Grumman Aircraft, and his mother was a WASP pilot during World War II. Gillies initially showed little interest in flying. It wasn't until a chance flight in a Hughes 269B that he found his passion for helicopters, quickly becoming a commercially rated pilot and balancing various flying opportunities alongside his day job. Throughout his career, Gillies has developed a unique approach to teaching auto rotation, emphasizing the necessity of flying realistically and preparing for real emergencies. He advocates the importance of cyclic back as a response to rotor power loss and highlights the significant gaps in flight training related to this critical maneuver. His wealth of experience includes handling numerous emergencies, including a harrowing helicopter crash, which you heard him start to describe. Pete and his passengers remarkably survived that crash. Enjoy the conversation. Cheers.
Hey, welcome to Hangar Z Podcast. I'm your host, Jon Gray. I'm also going to introduce the Helicopter Podcast. I might be stepping in for Halsey Schider as we sit here with Pete Gillies and Doug Williams. We're in the beautiful city of Redlands, California today. It's a toasty 115 degrees outside. And we have an opportunity to sit down with 2 legends in the industry. Pete is somebody who has taught, I think, a majority of law enforcement pilots in Southern California and throughout the United States over the course of his instructing career. And your career in aviation spans many decades, where you've gained a lot of experience and have a lot of insight for experienced pilots, for new pilots, and everybody in between. So I'm excited to sit down and talk with you, Pete, to kind of get some insight as to how you got into aviation and some of the experiences you had teaching folks throughout your career. It's pretty awesome. So thank you for joining us, Doug. Good to see you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, you've been a crucial part to this conversation today. You've developed a relationship with Pete over the years through Western Helicopters, I believe.
That's correct, yeah.
And you're helping him through things like this. You know, we actually met in person for the first time. I've known you online, which is always kind of funny, but we met in person for the first time while Pete was doing a recording for VAI.
That's correct. Yeah.
I got VAI right this time. Usually I still say HAI. Right. So that's the first time I got VAI correct the first time.
It's going to take a while. Rebranding.
But you guys did a recording where he got to kind of go through his presentation that he's done many times, which I actually heard for the first time in Anaheim back in 2014, I think it was, at HAI. So it was neat to see the live recording of Pete doing that for VAI. So I'm excited to get some snippets from that as we go through today. And also hear about you and your background, Doug. You're doing some interesting stuff on the fire side.
Yeah.
And I think that's a pretty unique position.
It is, here.
So let's go back before we talk to Pete. And maybe you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you developed a relationship with Pete and what your relationship is with him today.
Sure. Pete and I have become good friends, almost family, really. He knows my children. He's called Grandpa Pete when he comes over. He's been over to dinner many times. But it all started back when I went to Western Helicopters to begin my private pilot training. And Bob Spencer was the lead instructor there, and Pete was the chief pilot. Pete and I would get to talking once in a while, and it actually started out that we were both ham radio operators, amateur radio operators. And that is how I think we first became friends and hit it off, because we're both kind of nerds and enjoy the technical part of, life and things that come with it. So we started talking about ham radio, and I think, we just found out that we had a lot of interests. I was doing off-road racing at the time, and Pete has done a lot of off-roading in his life and found a lot of interest in that. So we pretty much hit it off right away. Despite our age difference, we became very close friends, and still to this day, we speak every day, pretty much via email or otherwise, and about all subjects, not just helicopters. We talk a lot about a lot of different things, and it's been a fun ride for both of us, I believe.
Yeah, when you have somebody like Pete in your life who's got the experience and wisdom that comes with that, it's pretty awesome to be able to lean on somebody like that.
You got to soak as much up as you can.
Yeah, for sure. But going back to your time at Western, what was the motivating factor for you to go to Western and start your helicopter training?
I'm a music teacher, and when the economy in that time started to take a turn to the worst, we were threatened with pink slips and losing our jobs. And so I sat down with my wife and had a conversation about what's next in my life, what can we do? And I had always been interested in aviation. I got Microsoft Flight Simulator as about, I want to say, middle school. The very first version, I think it was like the trial version where you got landing on Half Moon Bay in a Cessna, and that was all you got. And I probably did that 200 or 300 times, and finally bought the program. And the helicopter part of it was not very good, but the airplane was pretty realistic. And so I really spent hundreds of hours on Microsoft Simulator. And my wife had said, you are really interested in aviation. I think you should look into getting your helicopter pilot's license if I had to start over. And so I did some research online, and I saw the comments from former law enforcement and Customs and Border Patrol folks that were saying that Western is the best. There really is no competition. They have the experience, they have the people, they have the equipment. And so it really wasn't a hard decision, and it was pretty close. I'm living in Yucaipa, and Redlands is my home airport, but Rialto, at the time L67, was where Western was based. And so that's where I went and got my initial training. Like I said, it wasn't a hard decision, seeing the legends and such that were working there. And I didn't want to work with a brand new CFI student. I wanted to work with someone that had the experience and knowledge in the industry. And, that's what Western came in, because it was all there. Like I said, it wasn't a hard decision, and I don't regret it at all. Unfortunately, Rialto, the city of Rialto, decided that they could get a lot more money for that land developing it than they could use it as an airport. And so they had a congressman in their back pocket, and they bypassed the 20-year rule and shut the airport down and bulldozed the whole thing over. So Rialto was no longer. Western ended up moving to Riverside, but they didn't make it through COVID. Unfortunately, they closed. So Western is no longer. But it was a fun ride. I was the last private pilot.
Wow, that's
Western.
cool.
So it's kind of sad and good at the same time.
Yeah. Western Helicopters was legendary in Southern California for law enforcement, and again in the U.S. Jeff Rakovich, one of the co-hosts on the podcast, he was a longtime Western Helicopters student, and he's a huge fan. I know he'll be jealous that he's not here to talk to Pete.
We miss you, Jeff. Rat.
Yep, the good old rat. So yeah, it's interesting. The last 10 years or so, as we've flown over what used to be Rialto Airport, to see bits and pieces of that runway disappear. And unfortunately, it seems like that's kind of becoming common practice with a lot of the airports and general aviation. It seems like they're disappearing.
It's a money thing,
Yeah.
They can get so much money. But Rialto was so nice because it was uncontrolled, and we had 4 separate helicopter pads on the north side that we could do whatever we wanted with. We didn't have to call anyone. It had a north-south runway and an east-west runway, so we could, depending on the weather, or we could find something to do almost every day. And it was also at the mouth of the Cajon Pass, so high winds were very common. And we got used to flying in high winds because it was pretty much every day. In fact, Pete always said, if you can get the hangar door open, you get to fly.
That's funny. Yeah, Santa Ana winds. It's very common here in Southern California in the fall and the spring after storm systems roll through to get those. And yeah, you're right at the mouth of that. And man, I can only imagine how turbulent that was for you trying to pick up or set down.
It was good practice, though, you know. But Pete will tell you this too. Helicopter doesn't care if the wind's blowing.
Yeah, that's true. My partner used to say that. My first partner when I went to aviation.
Probably got it from Pete.
He probably did get it from Pete. And I tended to disagree with Charlie. I'm like, well, the helicopter may not know it's windy, but I do. Well, man, it's an honor to have you guys here. Thank you for joining us. Pete, you know, he spent a lot of years around helicopters and shooting guns. So as a result of those two things, his hearing is not what it used to be. Would you say you're mostly deaf at this point?
Mostly
That's a perfect timing.
Without these hearing aids, I'm really deaf. Yeah. This comes from growing up on a ranch near San Diego as a teenager, right after World War II, and my dad was in the Navy, and he had friends left and right, Navy pilots and other Navy personnel, and everybody had guns from having been in World War II. Mm-hmm. He had ammunition, he had guns. If you came home from World War II, your duffel bag always had ammunition and guns in it. Mm-hmm. So there were guns everywhere. I grew up in Syosset, Long Island, New York. And in New York State, guns were bad news. Nobody had them unless you were super licensed and restricted to everything. So as a kid, I had no exposure to guns. During the war, all of my friends and I had rifles cut out of wood, pretend type stuff, World War II. Mm-hmm. But as far as real guns and real ammunition and shooting rabbits and hunting and all that stuff, no, it was done, but not like California, living on a ranch. So my dad was with Grumman throughout the war in charge of flight test engineering, which means that all the test pilots at Grumman, and Grumman was running Navy fighters and torpedo bombers 24/7 at the peak of the war. All the factories producing aircraft in the country were running 3 shifts, never turned the lights off. And he was in charge of the technical end of test flights. All the test pilots worked for him, and you had to have some kind of an aeronautical engineering degree to work for him, because if you took an airplane out to give it a test flight, after they open the hangar door, could be middle of the night, out comes a F-80 something, fighter plane, whatever, you're expected to test fly it. Mm-hmm. And what Dad doesn't want to hear is you come back and say, well, Bud, that just doesn't feel right. Something wrong with the aircraft, fix it. No, he wants you to sell him an engineering term because of your education. He wants you to tell him too much dihedral in the right way, or the fuselage is twisted, or something where they can immediately fix it, and then it can be ferried to become a warship in Europe. So he had high standards, and Dad was a graduate of MIT engineering, and none of this rubbed off on me. I'm just a kid. I'm just a kid, and to babysit me on the weekend, Dad would take me with him to Grumman, put me on a Cushman motor scooter outside of flight test, and his words were always, don't hit anything. And I just drive around Grumman for whatever time he's in the hangar. It was an interesting thing, but as far as guns, out of the question. At the end of the war, Dad was asked by the Navy to move us and himself to San Diego, where he could help Ryan Aircraft get the Ryan Fireball off the production line and into the Navy. They had given Ryan a contract. The Fireball, single-place fighter plane, recip in the front, jet in the back. That was in production when the war ended, and that's why we moved to San Diego. But in 1944, there were no places to buy or rent in San Diego. It's a Navy town. There was just no place to live. Mm-hmm. So he found out on a mesa, far, far from everything, he found a place that was available. And it was going to be the world headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses. So they had a ranch house, barn, and provisions for a giant antenna to worldwide communication and all that. That was all abandoned and removed when he found it, and that's where we moved to.
Wow.
So now...
Thank you to our sponsor, Vertical Aviation International. Are you ready for the largest vertical aviation show in the world? Verticon, formerly HAI Heli Expo, is coming to Dallas in March. With over 15,000 professionals and 600 companies in attendance, this is an event you don't want to miss. If you're interested in exhibiting, contact sales at verticalavi.org. That's sales at verticalavi.org. See you at Verticon.
With the availability of guns and ammunition, I mean cases of ammunition, not going to buy a little box, you know. I mean, I was in heaven.
Yeah.
You know, I had guns, and they were all 30-06, major recoil. So for many, many years, my complete right shoulder and arm up here were black and blue for the recoil. And unfortunately, nobody thought about hearing protection back in those days. There were no earmuffs, no earplugs, nothing. Everybody coming in from World War II was half deaf anyway. All the airplanes were loud. And so if you were a pilot flying World War II, bombers or fighters or trainers, whatever, it was hard on your hearing. So nobody thought about ear protection. That wasn't a subject. So Dad started bringing home from his buddies in San Diego, bringing home cases of 30-06 military ammunition, just as would be delivered on the front line. And you name the kind of weapon. If it was used in World War II, he'd bring it out. One of his buddies had one. Everybody brought guns home from war. So with my interest in guns, he just offloaded the stuff on me. And my thing, the reason the herring is gone, is that every afternoon, after I would hike home from school, I would sit on one side of a canyon and shoot across the canyon with large caliber big bore rifles. The target being a big piece of steel hung between two posts on the far side of the canyon. And I would shoot until I heard that plang. Meaning, of course, I'd hit the target. And if it took me 30 minutes, I'm reloading, shooting various positions. So I ended up being an absolute crack shot, but it cost me my hearing. Nobody thought about it back then. And I would do this every day until either my ears were ringing so bad I couldn't stand it, or my shoulder couldn't take any more recon. That's how I got to be a good shot. So one thing led to another, and I ended up with an interest in logging, because Dad used to get all these magazines about this and that, and two of them had to do with logging in the Pacific Northwest. It fascinated me. We made a couple of trips up there to see my uncle and aunt. I got a smell and taste of the sawdust burners that were being used all over. If you had a lumber mill and you made lots of sawdust, you burned it in a upside-down cone burner. And so there was a common aroma in Oregon and southern Washington and all that. And it was like drugs to me. If I could smell that, that's where I wanted to be. So Dad recognized this, and he and Mom started thinking about the fact that maybe I should go to school and learn something about logging. All I really wanted as a senior in high school was my girlfriend and me and a World War II surplus truck, Army truck converted to a logging truck. That was all that was on my mind. Aviation, by the way. Everything was aviation in the family because of the background of both Mom and Dad having met in 1931, 32. Dad being a Navy carrier pilot back then. Mom having in nurses training in New York City, having no interest in aviation, but they had an interest in each other. And Mom found that when she'd go on a date with my dad, Navy dad, he always had 2 or 3 of his buddies with him. They're all pilots. They're all yakking about aviation, and she knew nothing except this was up and this was down. So she met Amelia Earhart, the famous round the world pilot. Okay? And they became good friends. And back then, if you didn't know how to fly and you wanted to learn, well, half a mile away in a big neighbor's field over there, there's a guy that comes in on Saturdays with his open cockpit biplane. He'll teach you to fly. So learning to fly was no big deal. And even today, the flying part is as easy as sitting there listening to me, But back then, that was something, and it was, so Mom got her pilot's license, and then Dad would talk to her, and you know what happened then, and here I am, right? Anyway, it was all aviation from 1932 till on, all up through the war, and so to me, I hated it. I hated it because I had a wonderful negative to my physical self, and that was I got airsick easily. Just look at an airplane, I'm getting airsick. I have a younger sister sitting next to me in the back of whatever kind of a puddle jumper that they had at the ranch. We had a dirt strip cut through the sagebrush. And my younger sister sitting here, and we're flying across the country going somewhere. Mom and Dad are flying. The turbulence is terrible. We're all but upside down. I am clutching a barf bag. My sister is reading a book. Bulletproof. So I did not like aviation. I got airsick. I had no use for it. I had my own personal 4-wheel drive transportation in the form of my horse. His name was Buck. He was fearless. He had a back about as wide as his table. My legs hardly went over the edge. He would go anywhere. Nothing scared him. He'd go up to mechanical equipment that's running. He'd bite on it, and he was my buddy. And we would enter trail horse class in little horse shows in Mission Valley. And he'd always win because he could go through gates and into a horse trailer and back himself out and all this other stuff that you go through as trail horse competition. So that was my 4-wheel drive. So I had transportation, go anywhere type thing. And Mom and Dad told me more than once, Pete, do anything you want to do, just don't get hurt, including the day I turned our John Deere Model M upside down, pulling on a tree stump as about a 14-year-old that didn't know anything. And the tractor went over on its back. It's sitting there upside down. The crankcase oil is now coming out of the dipstick and pouring out of the exhaust. So there's smoke, there's no fire. The big rubber tires are still tuk around. I look up toward the ranch house, and here's Mom and Dad walking across the field. They're going to the whatever airplane we had on the place. They saw the smoke, and they're both carrying luggage. And Dad yells at me, "Are you okay?" "Yeah, okay, we'll be back." And they kept on walking. It was that kind of an upbringing. And on the ranch, you fixed what was wrong. You didn't have warranties and dealers and all that, which is where I picked up the talents that Doug has. He can fix anything. This man is amazing. And he's a musician, and he's a computer guy, and he's a pilot. But on the ranch, any help to fix broken engines or whatever was miles away. So our ranch, you just improvise and fix, change things around, get along with it. So that was my teenage years. But I hated aviation because, again, it was the air sickness, and besides, I didn't need to fly. There was no reason for me to learn to fly. Even though we had a dirt strip right there, the dirt strip had some boulders that the cat tractors couldn't remove. I went out to W.D. Hall Hardware in El Cajon, and I'm 14 years old, driving illegally in my old Ford pickup, and walked in and in my ranch clothes, and I said, "Hi, I'd like to buy some dynamite." "Yeah, fine. Sure, what do you want?" "I want 5 sticks of gelamite or something, electric or fuse." I said, "Fuse." Without any ID, asking me anything. I had parked the truck out in front on Alcohol Boulevard so they could see on the side it had a ranch name, not our ranch, but a ranch from the previous owner. So I started explosives. And so how do you learn explosives? I go to the nearby quarry every afternoon about 3 miles away. There's a Mexicano who is lighting off boulders that are drilled and collapse. They have to be broken up to go in a rock crusher the next morning. So he sees me up on the side of a hill watching, and he waves me down. He barely speaks English, and I can speak high school Spanish. We get along, and he teaches me how to make cones, to make shape charges, to blast boulders apart. So that was a skill I used on the runway. And I could go on and on and on. It was just that way, and no parental interference. Don't make me even look at the airplane. I could talk another hour, but I'll wrap this up. That led me to Oregon State in Corvallis for 2 years of forest engineering. And that was where, as a freshman, first day, Physics 101, I had to choose a lab partner. We all did. It was big mandatory physics class. And so the guy next to me, we shook hands. I walked over to his apartment that night. We're going to study physics together. And on the left side of the hallway going in his apartment is a glowing Helicrafters SX71 receiver, 2 diodes, lots of knobs. And I said, "What's that?" So that launched me on another career. Then I got very, very deeply interested in radio, pursued the logging thing for 2 more years. And then it started to get, the last 2 years of logging were going to be about tree identification, what to do with sawdust, fertilizing the forest, blah, blah, which was, I'd already learned the road building, the bridge building, and the highline logging and all that in the first 2 years. So I switched and just gave up and finished up at the University of Arizona in Tucson, and still no flying. Don't put me anywhere near an airplane. And that's where my career really changed, because at the U of A, to get home to the ranch in San Diego was like 7 or 8 hours of driving in my old pickup, no air conditioning.
In the desert.
Temperatures in Arizona, endless miles. And I'd stagger in late Friday night or Saturday morning. "Hi, Mom. You're alive?" "Yes, I'm alive." "Go to bed." And by late afternoon the next day, I'm driving back, and she is saying, "Pete, when are you going to learn to fly? When are you going to learn to fly? I worry about you." And when I was up in Oregon, it took 21 hours to drive, and I'd drive for a 4-day weekend. I'd drive 21 hours to get home. And back then, I was, I think, too immature to even think about getting a pilot's license. But by the time Arizona came along, and Mom was pounding on me, I finally, all right, got my private airplane license at Tucson International, and started giving guys rides back and forth, Piper Tri-Pacer, 4-place, 3 passengers to split the rental bill, and so forth. So that was it. No helicopters. Don't even talk about helicopters. But as mom predicted, once I learned to fly, no air sickness. Just great. And I'm enjoying Arizona. I can, in a Super Cub, converted to a tricycle gear, 135 horse Super Cub, to get up and go across the desert about 15 feet off the sagebrush and the cactus for miles and miles, and see animals and saguaros and the clean air of Arizona. that got to me. I started enjoying that. So I never have lost interest in aviation. I have kept that up. Even today, I finally got, Western was thinking about buying a jet when Rocky Mountain bought us. And the Rocky Mountain Helicopters is in Provo, Utah, and we had a lot of going back and forth. And Western had 2 Cessna 206s, and it was, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours one way. So the boss said to me, how would you like to learn to fly a jet? We're thinking about buying a jet. Okay. I had my GI Bill from being in the Signal Corps, and I went down to Riverside Air Service, a legendary Joe Pagan, and I'm in my pocket right now. I have a type rating for a Lear 34. Wow. If I had to be a pilot right now, please put me in a Learjet and turn me loose. Oh man. Things like, Pete, you're the pilot. Don't bust 18,000 feet. Because you have to be IFR. You know that, right? Right, Joe. Pete, here goes the altitude right to 18,000 feet. And I'm looking down at San Jacinto, and I can see halfway to Hawaii, and I'm totally mesmerized by this jet. So that's in my background. But Western used me constantly for flying airplanes because we had fire contracts all over Western USA, well, all over from the Rockies west. Every summer, all of our helicopters, 12, 13, 14 machines, were all out on fire contracts. And if you're a fire pilot flying for the government, every 12 days you will take 2 days off. And so will your fuel truck driver. And you will have relief pilot and driver during that time. So my wife, Pat, and I were a team. We'd get in one of the airplanes that Western had, BE-76 twin, or we had 2 Cessna 206s, get into something on a Monday morning very early with mail, supplies, or whatever the guys and gals wanted out on contract, and we'd be gone for the whole week, going from one base to the next. I'd give the pilot 2 days off, Pat would give the driver 2 days off, and then we'd go from that base to another. So airplanes remain very much a part of my life. And I can still say they do today. Mm-hmm. I think very fondly of them. So that's all. There's no helicopters yet. Right? I'll get to that and then we can go home. In working for the last company that I worked for, oh, by the way, what was I calling myself back in those days? With my interest in ham radio, which gave me soldering and wiring and basic electrical stuff, I called myself a bench tech, because I could fix anything, just like watching you, the way you dig into your drawers and you know where all the stuff is in your junky drawers and you pull this and that, and the next thing you know, it's gone, except for your BMW.
That's good.
When you're involved with ham radio, as much as I was, I had mobile unit in my car. Whenever we flew anywhere, including Arizona on relief, I always had 2-liter handheld, talking to the guys in the house. So that was very much a part of my life, was ham radio. And I ended up working for a company at Montgomery Field. And we had 400 people on a typical day, 1-story building. Our backlot line was the fence line, north fence line of Montgomery Field. And one of the engineers, late on a Friday, came to my desk. I was in charge of customer services worldwide for this company. We built test equipment used to analyze and control sound and vibration in missiles, airplanes, automobiles, and all that. My job at the time, I'd grown up with this company, and my job at the time was to supervise a group of technicians that would calibrate, repair, adjust equipment from all over the world that came in for updating. But right behind me, I had my workbench and my toolbox, which I still have because I was still, at heart, a bench tech. An engineer came to me and said, Pete, would you do me a favor, please, this weekend? Would you breadboard this circuit? He hands me a piece of paper on which he has sketched an electronic circuit. He said, we have a customer coming in Monday morning. I would like to show them that this circuit works. Would you breadboard it? Do you know what breadboarding is?
I don't know.
Okay. take a piece of pine wood to make a bookshelf out of. This diameter, this thick, soft pine, and a bunch of nails without heads, finishing type nails, and a hammer. And you look at the schematic and you say, okay, we need a resistor between here and here, bang, 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 bang. And you build the equivalent of a printed circuit board, but you're using nails. You tie this nail to that nail, and it's something that many technicians can't do because they can't visualize the circuit in anything but a piece of paper. But I caught on to that early on from ham radio and building my own equipment.
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support.
So, I came in on Saturday morning, and the place with all the people we normally had, it was like, a tomb. You could hear the pin drop. Well, I couldn't, but you could. There was nobody in the factory. We had Muzak on the overhead speakers during the week. Muzak was off, nothing going on, absolutely quiet, all this facility and nobody there. So I went to my bench, turned around, got my toolbox out and soldering iron, and I'm in the middle of breadboarding this circuit, hammering nails and wiring this and that. And I hear outside a very annoying noise, snarling noise, just losing my fillings. I had no windows where I was working. I couldn't see what it was. But I thought, whatever that is, it's something to do with the airport, I think, because our back bench line was the airport's north. Then 10 minutes later, I hear the same thing. This is very disturbing to me for some reason, because everything else is deathly quiet. So I walked out on the shipping dock, which faced the airport, and here was a Hughes 269B making an approach, because one runway went right past the back end of our factory. I can't believe it. I wonder if the guy that owns that knows how noisy that is. So before I walked back inside, I watched it land in front of the FBO where I normally fueled up an airplane to fly customers and fly our people. So I finished the breadboard, got in my car, drove around the airport, and went into the FBO. The owner was Pappy Keogh. Pete, where's your airplane? I said, Pappy, I need to ask you a question. And I pointed to a helicopter which was sitting out in front of his FBO. I said, do you know how noisy that is? Have you any idea? I've been over in a plant this morning and it's driving me crazy. And he said, what? We haven't had any complaints. You sure it was the helicopter? I know it was the helicopter. I came out and watched it from the shipping dock. Well, you guys are in the sound and vibration business. Well, if I give you a ride, do you think you could find the noise, where the noise comes from? And I said, I doubt it, but no. He said, listen, CFI is still here. Won't cost you a cent. He calls the CFI up, young kid, had to be, I think, pre-shaving, maybe 19 or something. He comes up, we shake hands, and then Pappy Hughes says, to the guy's named Jim, I think, Jim, this is Mr. Gillies. He's a pilot. He said the helicopter's making a lot of serious noise. I want you to take him for a demo flight. Maybe he can tell us where it's coming from. And I resisted, but he insisted, all right, it's Saturday. Nothing's going on. Nobody's at the plant, blah, blah, blah. So tonight's morning, mid-morning, late morning, we walk out, and I am already suspicious as we walk up to the helicopter, because I'm looking, 269B, and so we had a question. I'm looking at that rotor head, all this exposed stuff. I'm used to airplanes, cowlings, not mostly hidden, but this is like it's naked. And I could see the engine and the idler pulley and all this stuff, grease fittings. I'm thinking, I got in the right front seat, strapped in. Then this young CFI gets in the left and he cranks up the engine. I look up because now I've got stuff moving overhead. The blades are starting to move. And I convinced myself this was the dumbest thing I have ever done in my life. This is totally stupid. Come on, Pete, you know better than this. But I'm strapped in and he's smiling at me. It's going, we lift up. I've got duals, but I'm like this. We go out east of Montgomery Field across Murphy Canyon Road, which ends in a mesa that has nothing on it but sagebrush about this high, flat. And we're just flying very slowly above the sagebrush. And I'm just sitting there. The young instructor hasn't said anything about the noise. You hear the noise. And here goes a jackrabbit running between the sagebrush. And I had a fleeting 1 microsecond moment that this is kind of like me on my horse Buck with my rifle. This could be fun. No, I hate this already. It's noisy and all that. But I had a brief moment where I thought, I could do this on Buck. Rub that out. School expression, rub that out.
Yeah. On the chalkboard. I almost said whiteboard.
He takes the, we're not flying. I could see the control tower a mile away. We're just kind of fast hovering above it. Right? And then he goes down into the little gully. And being an airplane pilot, I'm looking at the wingtips, thinking, wait a minute, whoa. Not realizing where the rotor is much smaller. We get down, and now I'm getting fascinated. I'm thinking, maybe there's a helicopter in my future. But wake up, slap myself in the face, stop dreaming, and back up. And by now, I haven't said anything about where that noise is coming from. The control tower is a mile away over there. And the young guy looks at me and says, "You're a pilot, right?" You'd already heard that from the owner of the FBO. "Want to fly?" "Sure." Because I've been watching him. There was nothing to it. Obviously nothing to it. So in one motion, he takes his hand off the Cyclic, the collective, and feet off the pedals and says, "You got it."
Good luck.
We're in this high, slow hover, and of course, I'm on the controls. I actually had that helicopter under full control for something just under 1 second. I kid you not. I could, and all of a sudden he's saying, he wasn't using the intercom. He just yelled at me, "I've done it!" And he puts his hands on his controls, and the aircraft is like this table here. And I'll never forget the look. This kid, he couldn't be 20 years old, this flight instructor. He looks at me across, and the look on his face said, "I thought you said you were a pilot." That's the look on his face. I am right now, I am really humbled because I know what the stick does, the pedals, I know. Whatever this thing is, I don't know, but problem apparently is something I'm doing or not doing. Want to try that again? Sure. 1 second later, same thing. Act 2. I was devastated with all the stuff I had flown and driven and operated. What was the trick here? My ego and pride, whatever I had, went to zero right there. I pointed at the control tower and I said, "Pick me back. I'm done." "You done?" "I'm done." Shut down, walked in the FBO's office, and Happy Keogh said, "Well, Pete, where's the noise coming from?" And what I wanted to say, I can't say on the microphone, but my message was, "Thank you, Pappy. No, I don't know where the noise is coming from, and I probably would be happy if I never saw a helicopter again in my life." That was what I was saying. "Thank you. Pete, come back, take a listen." I'm done. And this was Saturday. I walked in the house, and my wife looked at me and said, "What happened to you? What happened to you?" Because it was written all over my face, my complete and total disappointment in myself. I mean, I've been discouraged many times in my life, but nothing compared to finding out that with all the things I had flown, was flying then, all the equipment I'd operated, nothing was too much, except this helicopter. Yeah. So I told her, and I said to my wife, I'm seriously thinking there's something wrong with me. I shouldn't be flying anything. I've got a problem. I don't know what it is, but I think maybe I should just tear up my flight certificates and get out of aviation before I do something stupid. That was Saturday afternoon, and I thought about this all day Sunday, and it just drove me batty. Monday morning, I walked into the company. Everything's in full operation. I walked into the lobby and said to the receptionist, I'll be back. Drove around to the FBO and walked in. Pappy Keogh's right there. Pappy Pete, where's your airplane? I said, Pappy, I laid two 20s in a 10, cash, two $20 bills in a 10, $50 on his counter. What's that for? I said, I want an hour of helicopter instruction. There's something wrong with me, and I want to find out what it is. He said, there's nothing wrong with you, but I'll take your money. 1 hour? I said, yeah, 1 hour. So he yells down the hall, hey, Bob, a different flight instructor. And where's the 269? It's gone. Now it's a Brantley B2B, which looks like a vanilla ice cream cone that you turn on its side. Nice round paper tail rotor back here. Bob Jones, former Army helicopter flight instructor back east, came up, shook hands. He said, follow me back to his office. What's your problem? When I described what happened 2 days before, he just looked at me and nodded, come with me. We walked out and got in that Brantley, and 1 hour later, my life had changed. That was the turning point. There was nothing wrong with me. He gave me the 29-point-something hours necessary to get my commercial add-on in the Brantley B2B. I still had my day job. Here I am. Now I'm happy. Now I know how to fly a helicopter. Glad. But where were the people lined up to hire me to fly? They should be lined up to the street. Fly for me, fly for us. You know, I had no time, no experience, nothing. I was a total zero. So there was no work for me. So I realized that, but I still had the dream of maybe this is what I want to do in life. A man on the field at Montgomery had 3 269s. 2 of them were B models, 1 was an A. He had them in a hangar. I didn't know him. He called me. I had given the FBO my phone number jokingly and said, hey, Pappy, if anybody comes in here and says they want a helicopter pilot, give them my phone number at my desk. I got the phone call. And here's a man that owns 3 300s. He's an engineer at Ryan Aircraft at Lindbergh Field. He gives rides at SeaWorld on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday, all day for VFR all day. His pilot is a tuna boat captain who goes away for 2 or 3 months at a time. No rides. He doesn't have this additional income. He said, I understand you've got a commercial certificate? I said, yes, sir, I do.
This podcast is brought to you by HeliCASTS. Tired of listings that go nowhere? Exhausted by tire kickers who waste your time? Don't sell your helicopter alone. HeliCASTS handles the entire process from start to finish. So, if your helicopter is sat too long waiting for a buyer, contact the team at HeliCASTS today for your complimentary market valuation. Call 1-855-HeliCASTS, 1-855-735-5226, or email sales@helicopter.com. HeliCASTS. List it, sell it, done.
Would you like to give rides Saturday and Sunday at SeaWorld? And I said, of course, probably 6 times, yes, yes, yes. He said, fine, I can't pay you because you don't have any time. All you have is your certificate, right? I said, that's right. I have to have a special rider from Lloyd's of London to ensure my operation, because you're going to be flying passengers for pay commercially. You still wanted to fly for me? Of course, the answer was yes. So that was a tremendous opportunity. It didn't satisfy my wife very much because I'm going Saturday and Sunday, but I'm getting experience. 3 minutes per trip, full loads every time. Just fly 10, 15 feet off the water in Mission Bay with the doors off. Passengers loved it. I had a loader guy to weigh 2 cents a pound back then. Whenever on a ride, and the line at Sea, people walking to SeaWorld, they'd see the helicopter, they'd walk, they'd get in line, stand on the scale, hand the money, and get ready to go for the ride. And here I am, round and round and round. Fuel? Well, occasionally I look at the fuel gauge and I'd have the loader hold the load, next load, I'd get out, engine and rotor gone. I always took 4 5-gallon plastic jugs of avgas with me in little cargo racks. And so I get out, engine and rotor are turning, walk over and get a 5-gallon can, walk around to the right side, over the muffler, engine running, fuel tank, cluck, 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 cluck. Meanwhile, my loader is holding the next load, and put the fuel tank away, and get back in the helicopter, give him the thumbs up, and here it comes. Two comments, and then I'll get off this subject. One was, one of the 2 300s had a single seatbelt for all the passengers. The seatbelt was about 15 feet long. And typical, when here comes my loader with a mama and a papa and the kids would be standing on the floor, mama and papa have one in her lap and all, and then the loader would reach across to my side at the end of the seatbelt. Oh, going around. Legal? I did it. But this was it. And the last story is one that still moves me today. It was a busy day at SeaWorld. Lots of flying, all that. At one point, the loader walked a woman, a middle-aged woman, walked her out, arm in arm, walked her out to the helicopter, helped her get in. And she was perfectly normal. She had to be 60 years old at least, white hair and all, a nice pleasant look on her face. She acted completely normal. And she loved that ride. You could, as I'm flying along, I was flying off of her emotions. She wasn't talking to me, but just her body, because I've been flying hundreds of people by that time for several years. There was just something about her I remembered. When we finished the ride, the loader came out, helped her out, walked her back. As the day wound down to 0, and I was about ready to leave, the loader came up to me and said, "You remember that woman you flew?" She couldn't stop talking about how much she enjoyed it. She was blind.
Oh, wow. Mm.
But the sounds, the smells of the sea, ocean, that's the experience. So that was some of the side issues I ran into as a pilot. All right, now we get down to the, you guys okay? You want me to keep going?
This is awesome, please, yes.
Definitely?
Definitely.
One story that I remember you telling me that I would like you to tell was how your parents found a camping spot. Do you remember your dad would fly the airplane around and you would drive with your mom in the car?
Yeah.
Can you tell that story?
Okay. That was the summer vacations that we took before I grew up and moved away. My sister, myself, and my mom and dad. And they liked to get away. And we had a little travel trailer. Back in those days, the 40s, you didn't have a shower and a Johnny and gas and electric and all that. You just had a trailer, 2 wheels, a door, get inside, out of the rain, and tow it with our old 1940 Buick. So we go on vacation, but they loved Arizona because they always had some kind of an airplane sitting out on the, out by the barn. We would take the Buick, pulling the trailer, and one of them, Mom or Dad, would take the airplane. And we had a receive-only VHF receiver.
Car.
It also was broadcast band along with that shortwave, and it included the aviation frequencies. So we'd go out in the middle of nowhere, just eastbound, and either Mom or Dad would fly ahead in the airplane. And they'd be searching, and finally, we had some kind of a flag that was on the car, and they could see, whoever was flying could see the car. And so sometime 2 or 3 hours after we drive away from San Diego, we hear the airplane and look up, it's circling. And whoever was in it, Mom or Dad, would talk to whoever was driving one way only, because we didn't have a transmitter, it was just a receiver. And between that and waving hands and all that, we get the message in the car that, yeah, in about 2 miles, turn right, it's a dirt road, and at the end of the dirt road is a stream and a waterfall and all that.
That's cool.
Place to camp.
Yeah.
I do this, and so what do you do with the airplane? Oh, you find all the farmers and ranchers had some kind of a dirt strip. And Mom or Dad would land, make friends. Sometimes the owner of the ranch or farm would drive them to where we are. That's the way a summer vacation was quite often. It was an interesting difference from moteling it today or flying to Hawaii. This was different. And it taught me a lot about ranching, farming, equipment, and all that.
And how many kids get to experience something like that? That's a unique situation.
So are you getting a feel for my background?
It's awesome. I love it. Very unique, especially today. That not many people get to experience that kind of stuff. You talked about your mom. Your mom didn't want you to get hurt. I'm going to fast forward a little bit to some emergency situations you've encountered. I remember listening to one, talked about the helicopter and crashing and rolling down a hillside. We're talking about handling real-life emergencies and the incident that you were involved with.
That is, of all the crashes I've had, and I've had many, you can't do the kind of work I've been doing and not have adventures. I say right now, though, and I already alerted you to this, I have had no formal training. The formal training I had was at Montgomery Field to be able to take my commercial flight check. So my logbook shows dual and solo of 29 point something, and then the FAA check ride. So here I am, a pilot now, and I've got 31 or 32 hours of flight time. That was the only formal training I've had in my whole career. The reason was that all the helicopter pilots on the streets back in those days were all former military. I am so glad, looking back, I could never have done the things I have done if I was formally trained. Because when you're a trained military pilot, you fly the same way, he flies the same way, he flies, and if you don't, they hand you a shovel and you're now big enough ISO. It's very simple. Everybody conforms. Bing, bing, bing. When I joined Western in 1972, there were 13 pilots. Every pilot had been in Vietnam. Every pilot had flown 086s. They were all trained the same. They'd all been in combat, in country. They had the maturity that you develop when you put in a tour like that. They'd been shot at, they'd been shot down. A couple of them had been confined by the enemy and all that. So that was the crew that was waiting for me at Western. They had totally formal training. You do it this way. I'm running the outfit. You guys are my pilots. I don't need to think, well, Don does it this way. Doug does it this way. I got an assignment to go rescue somebody. Who should I choose? No. In the military, either one. You go, now it's your turn type thing. So the pilot training at Western was of a very high caliber. They'd all been beautifully trained. And the mechanics. You're a mechanic in Vietnam. You get a shot in your 500 during routine daily job you were doing. You make it back to base. He's up all night fixing your aircraft. Tomorrow morning, it's done. Signed off, passed. The mechanics worked all night, fixed things. That today, you'd say, well, we might get to that next week. We got to have the aircraft tomorrow morning. Oh, and how about spare parts? How about replacement parts? In Vietnam, you need something for the engine or something for the airframe or another rotor blade or whatever. What did you damage? What happened? I sat there today. You must have been shot at. Yeah, don't remind me. So the mechanics are working on your aircraft all night. Meanwhile, you have gotten out of the aircraft and you have gone to the officers' club and you're half swashed because you and your buddy pilots have been drinking until midnight. Your mechanics have been working. You need that aircraft ready in the morning. So the mechanics call McDonnell Douglas and they say, no, they don't. They're halfway around the world. They go after the junk pile. That's why we had sky cranes over there. Sky crane, no armament. Sky crane's job, you crash, they get you out of the wreckage, and anybody with you, here comes the crane. Picks up your wreck, drops it behind the lines. He's the mechanic. That's where he gets the parts to fix the aircraft thing. That's the way it worked over there. I didn't know that for a long time. And here comes the crane, and the enemy already knows you've crashed. They're on their way in the jungle. But before the crane gets there, here come the guns. Here come the guns, the Apaches, whatever. And they are sanitizing that area. So the enemy knows if they so much as move a twig anywhere around your crash site, that you'll shoot them to pieces. So it was a team effort, and it worked, and it worked, and it worked. It was a tremendous thing. The guys were all guys that did Vietnam, and similar occasions have my total and permanent respect. I was in the Army, but with my electronic background, I was in the Signal Corps in Germany. I could have been sent to Vietnam, but at that time they needed my MOS in Germany, so I went to Germany. Well, so I kind of missed out on all that fighting and all the stuff going on. Okay.
Handling real-life emergencies. I'll let you read that.
Okay, this is a biggie. I have Cyclic, by the way, came to me very naturally as an airplane pilot because you make a landing, you're easing the Cyclic back if you have a stick, and I learned it at Piper Cub. So bringing a control back for any reason was not strange to me.
Thank you to our sponsor, Vertical Aviation International. Are you ready for the largest vertical aviation show in the world? Verticon, formerly HAI Heli Expo, is coming to Dallas in March. With over 15,000 professionals and 600 companies in attendance, this is an event you don't want to miss. If you're interested in exhibiting, contact sales at verticalavi.org. That's sales at verticalavi.org. See you at Verticon.
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support.
This podcast is brought to you by HeliCASTS. Tired of listings that go nowhere? Exhausted by tire kickers who waste your time? Don't sell your helicopter alone. HeliCASTS handles the entire process from start to finish. So, if your helicopter is sat too long waiting for a buyer, contact the team at HeliCASTS today for your complimentary market valuation. Call 1-855-HeliCASTS, 1-855-735-5226, or email sales@helicopter.com. HeliCASTS. List it, sell it, done.